Hello chess friends and welcome to another game analysis. We are in the game between the Soviet grandmasters Efim Geller with the white pieces and Vasily Smyslov with the black pieces. They played this game in Moscow in 1965 and let's see what happened. Efim opens game with the d4 and after knight f6 Vasily played, we have c4, g6, knight c3 and d5. This is the Greenfield, and after c capture on d5 we are in the exchange variation. So knight capture on d5 and white moved the pawn on e4. So now he's creating a very strong center with the 2 pawns. Knight capture on c3, b recapture on c3, and bishop goes to g7. Bishop to c4 and then c5. Black starts a strong attack on pawn to square d4, and then white defend the center pawn with the move knight to e2. We have castles for both of them, and then knight goes to c6, developing piece and also increase the pressure on the d4. So bishop to e3, protect the pawn, queen goes to c7, and then rook to c1. This move will make sense only if white can open the c file. For now it is not possible, but maybe in the future if black capture on d4 and white will recapture with the c pawn, c file would be completely opened. So rook to d8 was played in this position, and then white played f4. So this is a critical position where we need to stop and see what was the option for black to play. In this position he moved the pawn to e6. But as we can see, that will completely close the diagonal for a bishop from the square c8, and he is the only piece which is not developed yet. So this bishop can be developed on the square g4 that will create a pin on the diagonal from d1 to h5 and also increase the pressure on the square d4. So right now black threat to capture the pawn on d4 and white is unable to recapture. But that did not happen in the game, so he played the move e6, and then we have king to h1 and black played the move b6. It is interesting to see that the Vasily can play the move knight to a5, which will attack the bishop, and after bishop moves to d3, Vasily can play f5, starting counterattack in the middle of the board. And if e capture, then he will recapture with e pawn, creating a pretty decent position for him. But he played b6, and then we have f5. White continue with his f pawn, and then he played with the knight on a5. Bishop moves back to d3, and then e capture on f5, e capture on f5, and bishop goes to b7. We have queen to d2, connects the rook, and probably threat to go with the bishop on h6. That will also make sense in the future. So Vasily moved the rook on the square e8, knight goes to g3, and then queen to c6. So with the bishop and the queen he's creating strong attack on square g2, and right now this queen is pinned for protecting the pawn on g2. So he moved the rook up on f2, and we have moved a rook from a to d8. But instead of that, he could also play one very interesting line. Vasily could sacrifice the rook on the square e3. Let's see what will happen. If he take the bishop on the square e3, queen will recapture on e3 and then c capture on d4. We have the line with the c capture or on d4, or queen goes to f4. So let's see this line. After queen moves to f4, then d will capture on the c3. And if white play f6, bishop goes to f8, and we have one very sharp move for white, which is a knight to f5. So right now he tried to move the knight on the square e7 or square h6, which will give a check to king and prepare some mate threats. But in the line, if he capture with the c pawn on d4, then bishop can capture on d4. So white is unable to capture on d4 because his rook on c1 is hanging. But if he moves the queen on h6 with the idea to push pawn on f6 and threat mate on the g7, black will probably capture the rook on the c1, and then when queen recapture, he will take the rook, another rook on f2. So queen h6, for example, and bishop needs to go on the square d4. We have f capture here, h capture on g6, and then after bishop sacrifice, pawn takes, queen takes, and then king goes to f8. It is a forced position, so queen can go on a d6, give a check, and attacks the bishop, so it is a winning position for the white. But he did not capture the bishop on the square e3. He moved the rook from a8 to d8, which is also a good move. And then we have bishop to h6. So bishop moves to h8. Black don't want to trade bishops. And then queen goes to f4. Threat to capture here on the g6 and attack the f7 square. So rook goes to d7, protecting the f7 square. And then knight goes to e4. We have a move for black, which is c4. And in this position, it is an interesting line if black offer queens for trade. If you move queen to c7, then white will move the rook on e1, and queen cannot capture on f4. That is not a good move, because white will first give a check with the knight on the square f6, and if bishop capture, here is the mate with the rook on e8. So after rook goes to e1, bishop capture on e4, rook capture on e4, rook capture on e4, and queen capture on e4. So now white tried to give a mate with the queen on e8, and it is a pretty good position for a white. So, but here black played c4. He did not offer queens for trade on c7, and after c4 we have bishop to c2, rook from d to e7, and then rook from c1 goes to f1, create a very strong attack using the f-file, and then rook capture on e4. We have f capture to g6, and right now this queen is sacrificed, but he cannot capture the queen. If he captured the queen, here's a mate in 1, g capture h7, and it is mate to black king. So he cannot capture. Instead of that, let's see if he capture with the queen on a g6, then queen takes on f7, which is a check, and queen capture, rook will capture on f7, and then if bishop goes to g7, the rook will capture, king to h8, and the rook capture another bishop here. If the knight capture, rook capture, on bishop capture on e4, and it is a much better position for white, because right now black cannot capture here on e4, white trade mate on square f8, and it is completely winning for the white. So that did not happen in the game, and after f capture on g6, black played f6 move, and we have queen to g5, another queen sacrifice. Right now black is also unable to capture because white will give a mate here, so rook capture, and that would be a mate. So after queen to g5, we have queen to d7 move, and then king goes to g1, bishop goes to square g7, and then rook capture on f6, rook goes to g4, and then pawn capture on h7, which is a check. So after king goes in a corner, bishop capture on g7, another check, and then after queen capture, and the last move f played was the queen sacrifice. So he sacrificed the queen on the square g4, capturing the rook, and in this position Vasily resigned. That was one very good game play by Efim Geller. He sacrificed the queen so many times. So let's see what will happen if the Vasily captured the queen. So if he captured the queen, here's an easy win for white. He will give a check with the rook on f8, and then if he capture, rook will recapture on f8. It is a check to king, so king to g7, and here is a mate in 1, just promote the queen. But in the position after queen capture on g4, Vasily resigned the game. This is one brilliant game with so many queen sacrifices, and I hope you enjoy in this game analysis. If you want more games from the history, from the brilliant chess history, please let me know that in the comment section below, and I will analyze more games. I hope you enjoyed in this game analysis, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.